Thank you everybody for coming out today. When I've been at a few programs that Robert has done here at the Santa Monica Public Library, and they've been great. And there so many times amazing stars come here, and they have a book that we want to share, and it's always been a great experience. And when I saw, Dawn, that you were listed as coming to the library, I begged Robert to be able to get the chance to do this because like probably so many people sitting in this room, we grew up watching Gilligan's Island. It was in syndication. You could watch it more than once a day. So,
how many languages that you want.
Exactly. I mean, how many languages was it translated?
They say over 30. I don't know how many languages there are, so I don't know.
But that's a lot of the world watching Gilligan. And it's now 50 years. This is the 50th anniversary of Gilligan's Island, 1964. So, having watched it several times a day, I have to say my most cherished childhood toy was a floating Gilligan's Island playset.
Well, don't you wish you still had
I
one?
have parts of it.
Oh, maybe I have the other ones. I have
Okay,
parts
maybe we
too.
have one playset between us. But I think it was very telling that playset came with, yes, it was a floating green plastic island and a hut and stuff like that. But in terms of the characters, it came with a little PVC skipper, a Gilligan, and a Mary Ann. It didn't come with a ginger. It didn't come with a professor or a lovey, or if it didn't come with a lovey, I probably would have liked it. That was an early warning sign that you're gay, I think that you But it came with a Mary Ann, and I think that's very telling that Mary Ann was one of the really key characters out of 7 to that show. Why do you think that she caught on so much?
I was just going to answer your other questions.
Go,
Probably
go,
because
do
they
that.
probably had to pay everybody a royalty. Pay me. That's probably what it was. Why do you think Mary Ann was so lovable?
Why did she catch on?
Well, I think because she'd been everybody's friend. Boy, girl, husband, wife, everything. I think her moral compass was right there. She was accommodating. She shared. She helped build the huts. She was cheerful. She was the typical best friend, wife, girlfriend. I think that Sherwood did a really good job of kind of portraying that. It was interesting when I wrote the book, there's a description of every character. There's a professor, and there's a movie star, and there's Mr. and Mrs. Wealth, and there's a skipper and a first mate, and a girl from Kansas. So she could have been anything, I guess. At first they said she was a school teacher. Somebody said that she worked in a grocery store and won the trip. There was never any real reason why Mary Ann was on that boat.
Are you saying there wasn't a coherent logic to go with?
Somewhere they lost it along the way, long before the pilot.
But you brought that up in the book, by the way, What Would Mary Ann Do, is the book. You brought that up in the very beginning of the book. As you said, everybody, even in the theme song, everybody else has a profession listed. And it's the movie star, the professor, and Mary Ann.
No, and the rest.
And the rest, yes.
It was the first year. But there was a reason for that, too. When the series was made, there were 7 other characters. CBS thought it was kind of a stupid show, but he said, let's do it and let's rewrite. So they recast everybody. And the professor and the two girls were really 3 school teachers. So they went out and rewrote a movie star, farm girl, I guess, and a professor. So all 3 of us auditioned for those roles. So coming in, it was a very different show completely.
Right.
And then CBS hated it, didn't want it to go on the air at all. And James Aubrey said, how in the world are you going to even say they're on the island? Well, we'll have a song. We've never done a song before. They introduced what it was. So Sherwood said, well, I've got a song, I'll bring it in tomorrow. And then he calls his agent, he said, I can't sing, what do I do? So he sat down at the piano and tried to play and wrote the song. And then he said he walked into the Suits at CBS and sat down at this long conference table. At the end of it was a piano. He said, I played the piano and sang the words and did the sound effects of the storm and everything and finished with a flourish. And they all just sat there and said, thank you very much. And he walked out, and he didn't have any idea that they'd pick it up. But they showed it in an audience test, and it was the highest rated show that had ever been tested by an audience. So even though they hated it, they
had no choice.
No choice. So when Ginger got cast, she got cast in New York, and her agent said, she's in 5th position billing. She's after the Howells, and nobody after her. So William Russell and I had to be the rest until the 2nd season.
And what made it change?
Well, everybody
Change the
takes credit
color?
for that. John Rich, one of our directors, said he did. Bob Denver really fought for me. There's a cute story about a TV Guide with Bob. And Sherwood, too. They thought that was ridiculous. There's only 7 of us, you know. But Russell and I, right till his death, used to sign each other's cards saying, love the rest.
It didn't hurt, too, that Mary Ann looked really good in those short shorts and that tie-off shirt. So I think that adds to her popularity.
Well, that's the first short shorts ever on television. They weren't ever allowed. You couldn't show my navel more than 3 seconds during an episode. You couldn't show Tina's cleavage. The Howells had twin beds, and now look what we're doing. And piano tops and topless, and I don't know, the Kardashians.
And we're going to get to that. A lot of your advice in the book is about comparing, I think, Mary Ann's times versus modern times and how to navigate them. So I want
How to
get
cope
that.
with, yeah,
Yeah.
cope with it.
You know, you also say in the very beginning of the book that because the character was just listed as Mary Ann, that a lot of who she became ended up coming from you. You just brought your own personality to the role.
Well, and I'm a theater major, so you always are preparing for a character, and all right, she's in Kansas, what would she be? Most likely she'd be a farm girl. Most likely she'd be in Gingham. I really insisted on that on the test. I wore my hair in ponytails as a young, not as a kid, but you know, high school and teenager, so I had terrible hair, so I did that. And I remember fighting with the hairdo. She wanted one pigtail down the back, and I had a real round face. And I said, no, I need a little something around here. So I insisted kind of on the pigtails. And it was funny, we tested at CBS on 3rd and Fairfax. And it was a huge room, about 4 times the size of this. And there were about 300 people coming for the Professor Mary Ann and Ginger, in and out, trying to have people match and everything. And I didn't realize that, but in every room practically at CBS is a little monitor of television. So I tested for 5 days with different people matching up, and finally one man came out of the men's room. He said, if I have to look at that Gingham top one more time. Tired of my wardrobe already.
Again, was that a straight man who was tired of the top? I don't know. So the advice that Mary Ann gives in this book, I think it's a really, for when you pick up the book, you'll see it's a really interesting hybrid. I had a really fun time reading it because it does have a lot of really great Gilligan's Island stories in it. You talk about your co-stars, but it's also very personal to you, and it's also then an advice book about everything from how to dress to personal behavior and responsibility. So there's so much in here. How did you come up with the format for what you wanted to say in here?
Well, I think I came up with it by doing all these talk shows and autograph shows and everything. The fans. I mean, the fans have come up to me now for 40 years. I married a Mary Ann, they said. I married a Mary Ann. And my sister was a Mary Ann. There was an identity with this character that you loved her. She would have been your best friend. I keep saying I was thinking, or your best friend as a grown-up. People talk to me like I'm their sister or their brother's wife or something. I was on an airplane not long ago, sitting in the front row with a gentleman who was flying business class. He got so excited it was me, and he started telling about the stories when he was 14, coming home and everything. And he said, boy, I married a Mary Ann, and it's just wonderful. I have a mistress, though. I have a mistress, though. Oh, and I love my wife dearly, but I have a mistress, you know. I said, wait a minute. Why don't you drop the mistress? Well, the 2 combinations are pretty good. But I think there's a responsibility that I feel for that character. It's not a goody two-shoes book, but I know how hard it is today, and I don't even have children, how hard it is to raise kids with all this technical stuff going on. You don't know where they are, you don't know what they're saying. There's most of the marriages are in divorce, remarried again, so you have stepkids in the house. Let's say I raised a child and I insisted on manners, but now my new husband's wife didn't give a darn about manners, so they're eating with their fingers. There's tension already. Both parents have to work, and it's not easy to guide. When you went through my life, I grew up in Reno, Nevada, where there was prostitution, divorce, gambling, but my mother was a Mary Ann's mother. My mother raised me as Mary Ann. She knew where I was every single second. And I'll tell you 2 very funny stories. Well, funny to you, not so funny to me. I went to a women's college, Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, which I always wanted to go to a girls' school, but it's what it was, and I loved it. I was far away from home. I grew up in Reno, and it's in Missouri. And when I graduated, actually Mary Ann was born at Stevens because my professor talked me into taking a drama course because I couldn't take any PE because my knee's dislocated. So I transferred from Stevens to the University of Washington in Seattle. I was now going into my senior year, which is 20 years old, almost 20 years old. And my boyfriend, college quarterback from Pomona, was going to drive me from Reno, pick me up, and go to Seattle. My mother did not like the idea that I was going to be in a car with a boy for 12 hours. She said, okay, I'll let you go. Well, my head's against the door in the car, and I'm asleep, and he's driving along, and the highway patrol pulls us over. The siren pulls us over, and I said, Al, were you speeding? He said, I don't think so. Rolled down the window, and the highway patrolman said, is there a Don Wells in the car? Now, I was 60, coming back from the Solomon Islands, where 5 of my Stevens friends and I are adventuresome people, you know, going to some place where no white women have ever been before, blah, blah, blah. I was there for 3 weeks. Coming back, I took the puddle jumper to Sydney and then got on a plane in Sydney. And as I'm walking down the airport in Sydney, a pilot comes up to me and he said, aren't you Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island? Your mother's been looking for you.
You could never escape their grasp. And your mother, I know you and she were very close. You say in the book that your parents divorced when you were young and you grew up with your mother. You were an only child in her household, at least, right? You had step-siblings.
Right, I had step-siblings.
So very close. And your mother was, how much older than you was she?
That's a real good question.
Okay. I'm sorry, I promised there'd be no math.
I think she was 27 or something when I was born.
Because you just had a very close relationship from what I get.
Well, we fought a lot, though. I mean, I was pretty independent. My mother and father were very good friends. I never heard a bad word about either one of them, from either one of them. But my mother, I think, accepted the responsibility. She was raising a young girl and knew where I was. But she was very strict, but not mean or anything. And I was writing the book thinking, why didn't I run away? Why didn't I sneak out the window? Why didn't I slap her if we had a fight? Why didn't I? Respect. And how do you teach respect? I don't know that you can. It's by example. Like, can't you say, respect me and make you respect me? That's not going to work. It must be what I saw her working hard. I saw her, it was the era of those big crinoline petticoats. She'd be 2 o'clock in the morning with the starch ironing my petticoats. We grew gooseberries and asparagus and rhubarb in the backyard, and she worked full time. It was a brownie leader, and when I stop and think about it, you take it for granted. You think everybody's home's that way, you know, and I know it isn't now. And the things I learned from her were pretty practical. And one of the things I discovered in the book about myself, I mean, I couldn't do sports, but I had lots of really good friends, and I had terrible acne, and I was overweight, and all of the things that, you know, kids go through. And I was thinking, and it wasn't a bit interest in the theater or being an actress at all. I really liked science. And I thought, how did I get to be who I am? I credit Stevens College with, in my theater classes, to giving me that direction, but I was also pre-med. I was a double major. But where did I get that? And as I started writing the book, I thought, one of the things I did as a young girl was debate. And I was like the state of Nevada debating team. I was a really good debater. And as I was looking through that, I'm thinking, when you debate, you have to take both sides. And you have to thoroughly support one side or the other when you are debating. But you have to present them both, because when you go in, you just draw out of the hat whether you're for or against it. So it's kind of the way I look at life. What's the worst that can happen? What are the consequences of this? Sometimes I worry about it too much, but it's a pretty good, now I understand in high school why they make you take those extracurricular activities. It gives you something else in your life besides just your education.
Well, and you had a lot of facets in your life going on, because in addition to representing Nevada on the debate team, you represented Nevada in the Miss America pageant.
It's no big deal. There's only 6
that's no
girls.
big deal.
In that day and age, it wasn't the chorus girls and everything. It was all about scholarships. And I was asked to run, because I was a theater major, I thought, okay, I'll see if I can get in front of all these people and do a scene. Never thinking in a million years I'd be Miss Nevada. But as I said, there weren't a lot, there's only 10 cities in the whole state. But I mean, it was very good for me. And the whole thing about going there now, it doesn't exist, those beauty contests are very different. You couldn't even say thank you to the elevator operator. You could not talk to a man. You had a chaperone with you every single second. No breast implants, no hair dye, no falsies in the clothes. Everything was as real as it could be, and they had to be talented too. Well, we know they are all talented, but they have to do something. You know, and it kind of makes you try to be well-rounded. I was sitting at breakfast with one of the judges. The judges would go from table to table. There'd be 6 girls at a table, and Mitch Miller sat down. I don't know if you know who he was, but he was a band leader. And he was being very, you have to do this and you have to do that. In the meantime, he had his little goatee, and there were scrambled eggs in his goatee. And every time he was talking, his little beard would do this. And all of us were trying so hard not to laugh or not to say anything, but we got through it.
I love that you tell that story in this book, but you didn't name Mitch Miller in the book.
There's probably a family member sitting right here.
And you know, I also thought it was really interesting because a lot of people have their different philosophies about what it takes to make it in Hollywood. And I've interviewed a lot of actors where I've heard them say, one of the things that had made me make it, propelled me to go forward, is I deliberately made it so that I had no plan B. I had nothing to fall back on. And you gave yourself a year to make it, and if not, you had told yourself you would go to medical school, right? So you made it happen in that window.
I did, but I wasn't one of those people that had a passion and I have to go to Hollywood, I have to be an actress, I have to do that. I was good at it and I liked what I did, but it's also, could I make a living? And I picked Los Angeles instead of New York because I can't carry a tune. And 80% of the plays then were all musical comedies. So it was a gamble. But I came to Hollywood and auditioned for a play. There was a music box theater right by Grauman's Chinese Theater. And I got cast right away with Leon Ames and Mercedes McCambridge. And of course, she was quite an actress, and to be able to work with her. So I got my equity card right away, and of course, then agents came to see you. So then they said, can you act on film? Do you have any idea how to lower your voice? Softer so that we can hear you.
And how long after that, those first roles, did Gilligan's Island come about? I know you said the Roaring Twenties was in between there, some other TV stuff.
Well, I was under Warner Brothers option for contracts, so you can't go home and see what you just filmed or see it next week. I mean, I had to watch 6 weeks later when it came on the air to see what I even did on film, and I was blinking like crazy because the lights didn't know it. Roaring Twenties, in theater you try to be as authentic as you can. And I had this big moon face, and they wanted to make these little Marcel curls all around my face. I just looked like I don't know what. It was terribly unbecoming, but I let him do it because that's what you're supposed to do. My mistake was I should have researched the other hairdos that would have been right for the 20s and said, try this. He wouldn't let me wear false eyelashes. He said, your eyes are big enough, don't. And I come home and see Leslie Parrish, this long blonde flip, and false eyelashes.
So 20s. Yes.
No, and I realized that you have to take more control of yourself. And I learned about the camera. Louis Quinn taught me about matching. You know, if you're in a big scene and you have a line and you're drinking a glass of water, when they come in for a close-up, you have to drink a glass of water at the same time. And I didn't know that. He said, you screw that up, they're charging you $10,000 an hour to film. So he taught me actually the film technique of it. And then when I got Gilligan's Island, I went to the rushes every day. Nowadays you can see it, the director's not even standing by you. But I went every day to see what I did yesterday that wasn't right, that was, all of that.
And you helped, fashion Marianne's. In the book you talk about the shorts.
Well, I tried to make them fit my body because I was short-legged. I got the denim that was soft, not like the Daisy Dukes, and darts where you're around your waist, so it made your waist look thinner, and cut up the sides so my legs look longer, and then a little thing that covered my navel.
See, so lesson learned about taking charge of that.
And I say to all actors, read your contracts. It looks so long and so involved, read it all.
You mentioned about singing. You say in the book that you can't sing, but first of all, who else remembers my favorite episode of Gilligan's Island, the one with the honeybees singing Us, the mosquitoes? Do you remember that?
I do. It wasn't my voice.
It wasn't your voice.
No,
That explained.
No.
But you did go on to do a whole tour of musicals. You have photos in here from They're Playing Our Song and from a bunch of other shows.
They're Playing Our Song is the only musical I've ever done.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Almost killed me. I got down to a size 5. It almost killed me, but boy, I was going to try it. And I'd gone out with Chapter 2 all across the country, Neil Simon, and just sold out, and I was really good in the role. It was really the right role for me. The producer said, I'd like you to do Playing Our Song. I went, I can't sing. He said, everybody can sing. He said, go home and train for a couple months and come back. So I came back. I was living in Nashville at the time, and I worked with a country music singer coach, and worked with her. Only the songs from the show, no Happy Birthday, no nothing. And I came back, and he said, let's give you another couple months. So I came back again, and I was sitting in the rehearsal hall waiting to go in, and Lorna Luft, Judy Garland's daughter, comes in with her musical arrangements and her piano player. And I went, oh God, all I could sing is the 3 songs from the show. So I went in there and sang. What nerve I had. I don't know, I couldn't do it now. Went in and sang a song from the show, which you're never supposed to do. And right in the middle, Manny Eisenberg, the producer, raised his hand. He said, this is a musical, isn't it? And I went back again, and I got the part. But wow. But I wasn't any good. No, I was great in the role, but
Did you find that roles were either harder or easier to get once you were known as Marianne?
Harder, much harder. Well, it depends on where you're working. If you were working at dinner theater, it's great because you can bring an audience in. Live on stage as opposed to dead on stage. I don't know what that means. Or throw me peanuts, I don't know what that means. But to try to do something in New York or to try to do something more serious, I was hindered. I remember when Vagina Monologues came out, I really wanted, are you kidding, Marianne doing Vagina Monologues? Well, it isn't me, it's Dawn. And I'm happy. And you really have to fight for that.
I think there are a lot of people who would want to see Marianne do it.
But see, New York doesn't think that way of Hollywood, unless you're a really big star and you're dictating it. They're kind of snobs a little bit about it. Gilligan's Island, are you kidding me?
Did you go through stages with it? I know a lot of actors will go through a stage where they don't want to be called by the character name, they don't want to be remembered. Then maybe later they'll make peace with it. Did you ebb and flow with how you felt about it?
Boy, I just liked her all the time. And if you liked her, isn't that great? We both liked her. I mean, I think she was a great character. She was fun, and she was smart, and she was thorough, and she was cute, and why wouldn't you like her? And there was no animosity between Ginger and Marianne. All that Ginger and Marianne question happened after the reruns, kind of. And it's whether you were 9 or 16. Depends on your age bracket. 9-year-old would be terrified, you know?
What do you think is a smarter choice, Ginger or Marianne?
Well, asking me, Mrs. Howell. No, I think Marianne, because I think Marianne would have been, you partner, whatever that would be, friends or marriage or lovers or whatever. I think she was a good girl.
She was a good girl, and again, she debuted in 1964. This was just before the 60s really went crazy, went haywire, with a lot of good things like the sexual revolution, but there were drugs. That later on, we had Stonewall, we had Roe v. Wade, society really changed. Marianne kind of just came before all that. What do you think she would have felt about all the changes that came? Because
that's kind of the reason I wrote the book, because there was no birth control. The birth control pill was invented when we were on the island, and now look what's happening, all this hooking up, all that stuff. We've come a long way in 50 years, and as I think about it, I think, well, I'm sure, what's his face said, what do we got a car for? I could ride my horse. I think that the progress of where we're going in leaps and bounds. The thing that frightens me so is the lack of privacy. And whether you're trying to be private, you can't. What these movie stars have done of trying to keep the pictures being taken by paparazzi of their children. And it's kind of wacko, people coming into your computer and stealing things. It's a little different. We're kind of living defensively. But I think if you also develop a good character inside, you know the right from wrong, the good from bad, you have a better chance, that's all.
And what do you think, Marianne, what do you think the advice is that I want to hear what advice she'd give some of the people here, but what advice would she give to her fellow castaways if she were to critique their persona?
And existing now, I think the Howells were doing it just right. They bought everything they could, and they got everything they could pay for, so.
And they went on this bargain basement cruise, apparently.
And they took all the clothes, and I don't understand how we all got there. We have no idea. Makes no sense. I baked coconut cream pies and haven't seen a cow in 3 years.
No. But now vegan recipes, aren't they? Isn't that becoming a little more logical now? They can make a vegan coconut cream pie.
I'm coming out with a cookbook in the spring of Marianne Good Home Cooking kind of, but it's a little hard on the island. What advice would I give them? Boy, I don't know that I could give any advice.
Well, Ginger. I know you say in the book you think that she probably the moment she got rescued, went right back to Hollywood and tried to...
Oh, I think so. I think she was very proud of what she did as a movie star, and probably was disappointed she was marooned for 3 years and would go back and try. I think the professor would go back to either teaching or some educational or working for some organization that could use his brains. Couldn't build a boat, however, but other he was very smart at it. The Howells would just continue, maybe buy the island, I don't know. Skipper Gilligan might continue maybe having a SS Minnow group of cruise ships or fishing ships or something. And I think Marianne, that's what I got to thinking. What would she do? And as I was thinking about this at the last election, would she be a Marianne or would she be Hillary Clinton? Would she go back and try to be mayor of her city? I think she would have married. I think she probably would have had children. I don't know that she would have stayed on the farm. I think she'd have wanted to contribute to society more, especially having come from the island. And I think she was pretty productive and pretty bright, so probably could have done anything she wanted.
Of course, in one of the reunion movies, didn't they all get marooned there again? So maybe they're still there. I don't know. I lost track of where they are now.
Were the Globetrotters going back and forth?
There were a lot of people who came back and forth to that supposedly deserted island. There were a lot of guest stars.
90 minutes is way too long for Gilligan.
But what about the 30 minutes? Did you have favorite guest stars who came in and out, or least favorite?
And we did, and you didn't expect that. It was wonderful. We had Don Rickles, who worked 4 days, and Sherwood said if it had been a 5-day shoot, I wouldn't have hired him because he's kept you laughing for 4 solid days. There is nothing left inside of you because he had such a good sense of humor. Harold Stone, Denny Miller, who played the Jungle Boy. Kurt Russell was 9.
Yeah.
And the mad scientist, I can't think of his name, Nehemiah Pearson. Oh, we had a really good cast.
Wasn't one of the Gabors, right?
Oh yeah, it was a Zsa Zsa.
Zsa Zsa, yeah.
Zsa Zsa was a replacement for Betty Davis. She was doing a Gunsmoke and she wanted to do it so bad in her schedule, and they just couldn't work it out. But I would have loved to see her do the comedy. Wouldn't that have been something?
And that wasn't the first conflict between Gilligan's Island and Gunsmoke. I think when Gilligan's Island was canceled, it was one of them. Gilligan's Island or Gunsmoke was going to survive, and it ended up. It was supposed to be Gilligan's Island, and at the last minute, I think it was Paley's wife said, "No, I want Gunsmoke."
Gunsmoke's my favorite show. We were in the top 10. We picked up with all our scripts for the next year. My father died. I got a divorce, and Gilligan's was canceled all the same month. And we had everything prepared for the next season. We were going to Hawaii for the first time. We'd never been there. And he called and he said, it's over. And they had a half hour after us to film. They canceled Gunsmoke, and they moved us to Monday night. They moved us every night, and the audience followed us, which is unusual. And we were supposed to be a 7:30 slot or 8 o'clock slot on Monday. And they couldn't fill that half hour. Dennis Weaver had a show, but they couldn't get a sponsor. And Mrs. Paley came back from vacation, she said, you can't cancel Gunsmoke, it's my favorite show. So they canceled Gunsmoke.
It's amazing that TV history can be made on just one person's opinion like that.
But it's interesting to see, I wonder if we'd have just faded with the audience and you got more bored, whether you'd have the reaction for 30 years.
True, I mean, some of the best remembered shows like Batman also 3 seasons, and then you look at the phenomenon that is of the same vintage
Same thing.
and still is. So
See, there's no clothes or cars that fool you. There's no 56 Chevy in the driveway or anything with our show. Batman, they're always in there. It's fantasy anyway, so I think that has a lot to do with it. I do. I think the fact that we're all over the world, you get it. I can't go any place in the world. Marianne. Well, now it's probably, who is she? I don't know. She looks a little familiar. She'd stop wearing those pigtails. I might be able to.
What do you hear from fans when you hear from them?
They love me. They love me. A real love, I've gotten, that's one of the other reasons. I've gotten letters from, I was abused, I was a latchkey kid, I was made fun of in my neighborhood, I was bullied, and I'd come home and watch Gilligan's Island and my world would change. And I was going through the Pentagon the week that bin Laden went down. I got a tour of the Pentagon, and I don't have anybody military in my life, and I was curious about everything. And I had Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, historian, Marine, all with me going through. And when you go to a general's office, there's a placemat or a doormat out in front that shows you he's in. When you go into his office, there's 3 or 4 little offices with his aides and things, but his secretary's there, and if the placemat is also there, he's in. So I got to visit about 5 or 6 4-star generals, I was very excited about it. And when you probably know all this, I didn't. They have a coin of their own private coin. So when they shake hands with you, and if they like you, they press the coin for you to take. If they go to a bar, people buy them drinks, etc. So I came out with a handful of coins. And my Marine said to me, I've been in the service 20 years and I don't have that many coins. And I said, you don't understand, they are bombing Iraq. But at age 7, I was their fantasy. I was their best friend. So that was quite a very important time to me. That was very special.
And again, the syndication, I mean, when you think that the number of years that played that many times a day, you must have people of a wide age range who feel the same way.
I raised it, and it was a fun time. It was with your best friends. It's a great costume for a Halloween party. It's something your parents would allow you to watch, all of those things. And I guess it was the hope that every week you're going to get off. Maybe that was what kept them going. I don't know, because I don't know what we were not opposite, but the Monkees and the Partridge Family, it was all that Bewitched and Genie and all of that.
Syndication, you mean?
No, when we were on the air. I was on the air at the same time as Barbara Eden, I remember that. Because I had to wear this body makeup. And Barbara and I, we used to play bridge a lot, and I said, oh, they put me in Levi's, thank goodness I don't have to get that body makeup all off of me. And she said, Dawn, that's your trademark, don't get lazy.
And did you compare notes on hiding your navel?
Yes, we did, as a matter of fact. She did hers much prettier than I did. She had all those little beads around it.
When did you know, you talked about, first of all, that moment in 1967 when all that stuff happened in your life. How do you deal with that when all that changes at once? I know it seems you have such inner strength, but how did you deal with all that change?
Well, I'm instantly emotional. I mean, I talk to myself all the time. I say, that's the stupidest thing, why are you doing this? I do that a lot. I'm an optimist, really. I always want to look forward to something. Another project is something that's kind of, my mother was that way, and strong. My mother was very strong. And it either could get you down or kick you in the butt and keep you going, or have you just tune out. I don't know, but it's life. And each stone you have to step on. It's faith, it's love of family. My mother adored me. I have some fabulous friends. My father adored me. I come from good stock. I've always tried to work out what's wrong, what's the best way to go around this, how do I get that through. I think as I get this age, it's almost too much, let it go. So that didn't work out at this point in my life, but I was always looking for my next project. And I love people, I really do like people. In this day and age, I ran a film actors camp up in Idaho for a while, and I said, there's a whole new market now. There's the hosts on Entertainment Tonight and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to be a good actress. You don't have to be necessarily a beauty. You don't necessarily have to know news. I love news. I'm a news freak. But there is a career for you. A lot of people would come into Los Angeles and try to get an agent, which is hard, and couldn't get a job, but then they become casting directors. And then they knew all the actors and it's a whole business. It's show business, and I talk about that. It's a business. It's a business. And being temperamental and trying to be a star out of that is just a waste of time as far as I'm concerned.
You also talk about one less savory part of the business, which is breaking in by doing something on reality TV. How do you feel about reality?
Well, it depends on the reality. If you're learning something, I have got a couple of reality shows in development, Shipwreck One and stuff like that, but not Beverly Hills or Housewives of Bakersfield. I mean, I don't understand that. I don't understand that, and I don't discount The Bachelorette and everything, that the audience is loving it. It's no more a fantasy than Gilligan's Island. It's not really real. And I think we need an escape today, and maybe as an audience, if you love some of those Housewives of New Jersey or whatever, maybe you're thinking as a young person, oh, I could do that, or isn't that the silliest thing they're doing? You sort of are more involved in what's going on camera and stuff now than my generation.
We definitely are a very media savvy generation.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
everywhere, sure.
I don't like that, though. I don't like the fact that everywhere you turn around, somebody's behind you trying to find something wrong that you said.
Or as you say in the book too, about one of your greatest goof-ups can be
Oh, all over.
the world virally in a matter of moments.
And I think the young girls think they want to be kind of famous for a minute, and you don't know what it's going to do. And I congratulate any parents out here that are raising teenagers. It's a hard one. But it was then too. You had the Vietnam War, and people were, going over the border. And 100 years ago, the farmers were facing a drought, and cow dropped dead, and there's always adversity. And that's how you handle it. There's one of the things that tickled me was years ago, the top 7 most wealthy men or most successful people, something like that. What was their advice? It might have been a book. And the one I remember, it's very short, but he said, I was about 4, and I was in the kitchen, and I wanted a glass of milk. And my mother was doing the dishes. She said, well, get the milk yourself. He said, well, I went into the refrigerator. It was one of those big cartons, and I spilled it all over the floor. And my mother's reaction was, oh, well, look at that. You spilled it all over the floor. You may as well play with it. Play in it for a while, because you're going to have to clean it up anyway. So I said, I got my little trucks in, and I played in all the milk, and then I cleaned it up. Not, what did you do that for? Or
a choice 4-letter word.
Yeah, well, and
You're not a 4-letter word fan, I know.
Oh, but I do it occasionally.
Do you? It sounded like you don't do it.
I try not to do
very
it in public.
Who on the show had the worst potty mouth? Was it Lovey?
Skipper.
Sometimes. Sometimes she would surprise you. I don't think anybody had a potty mouth. I don't think anybody came in drunk. I don't think anybody was jealous of anybody else. I think it was harmony. And I always think about that, because I think Gilligan was a genius. I really do. When you see how his physical comedy was brilliant, and then you saw Maynard G. Krebs, and I saw him on stage several times. And I was doing one of my reality shows is Hunt Your History that I'm working on. So I was going downtown through LA, and they're redoing all those beautiful theaters down there. I didn't even know they existed. It's pretty as Broadway. And one of my escorts said to me, well, Charlie Chaplin built this one. And I said, he did? He said, yes. And do you know who Charlie Chaplin's best friend was? Albert Einstein. Now think about those two brains, that comedy, that intellect, and how they must have joined on some plane. That just fascinates me. So Bob was very smart. You wouldn't know he was. He was against pesticides, and Muhammad Ali 5 in the World Series in ratings. I don't think we analyzed it. I just, okay, what do I do next? I mean, I didn't think about the longevity until we didn't get any reruns and everybody else was making residuals. And we realized we haven't.
And I thought I had heard something that did you have some kind of deal though where you did get any, was that true?
No!
I had read somewhere, it might
the
have been the
Huffington
IMDb.
Post even talked about it. I'm
Yeah.
the only person who made reruns. I made $1 million. And it said that my husband was an agent, and he said the minute it goes into syndication, you're going to give her $1 million. Now I remember Sherwood saying we're never going to get picked up for syndication. I remember that coming out of his mouth. There was no negotiation. I didn't make a dime. No. And I don't know where
Sorry, it's not true. I wanted that to be
You wanted to
true.
borrow money, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
No, unfortunately.
Well, I think we're probably going to either get to questions or signing in a sec. Robert, I was just going to say, I'll ask one last question too, which is acting stuff coming up? Acting, producing, you said it, but you mentioned a
Well, I
shipwreck
have
reality
an
show.
offer for Love Lost and What I Wore, which I've already done, and an offer for Love Letters. Last year it was Lion and Winter. I'm always looking for a new one, something to challenge me. And I had a great idea. Did anybody ever hear see the play The Owl and Pussycat?
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the funniest plays ever written. The movie was not, but the dialogue is hysterical. It must have been his only play, Dan Michael's only play.
And you've done it, correct?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And I love it. Haven't done it in 25 years. But I was just thinking, it's such a funny play, and it's 2 characters, and she's a hooker that ends up living with an author that can't get writing, and she can't get a job, and it's very, very funny. why don't I play her as this aging old hooker where the nylons are all ripped and, you know, she's just really down the night out and a real good-looking young guy. You could maybe twist it. I mean, there's no romance, but because it's so funny, I have to look at it again. I think it'd be kind of fun to revive that.
I like it.
I like it too.
Hook up with a writer, get on it.
Get on it.
Robert, do we want to open up for some questions?
There's one right here in the green shirt.
Oh, thank you. I love Marion. She was my favorite character, and I thought you were brilliant. And I just wondered, now that you've written a book, did you enjoy that experience, and would you ever want to write another one?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I've got a second cookbook coming out, which in the spring, it's just good home cooking, but I opened it up to Facebook because I have so many fans, and the best Nebraska recipe from my grandmother and stuff is really kind of cool.
And is there coconut cream pie?
Well, there were 13 in the first one. I'm sure I'll put one. But you know, thinking about it, because I went through 4 co-authors. I said, that's not my voice. This is what I want to say. So the last one, I really communicated. And as I was leaving the house the other day, I said to him, you know what I'd like to do, Steve? He said, I like your chapter, I like men. And I said, I do too, I like men. Maybe I'll do one, the men in my life. And I'm not talking 1,000 lovers, I'm not talking but the men who really influenced me. And I really, most of the time, would prefer an evening with a couple of men than a couple of girls who just talk about clothes. Now, I have a lot of friends that don't just do that. Stevens College showed me all of that. But there's something a man creates that's different than a woman can create in your brain. I'm an avid football fan. I'm a Packer fan. And I love that. And I love the sports and all of that. So I think a lot of men have influenced me along the way. Maybe that's the next one. Or maybe I'll just sit on the beach and read.
I was just going to say, I just finally on YouTube watched Surviving Gilligan's Island, and that was awesome.
It really was, wasn't it?
You did such a good job with that. That was you learned so much information behind the scenes, and I just thought everybody in it did it. I mean, the guy that played the skipper was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he?
I mean, I thought it was his son, maybe. It
Yeah.
was amazing.
It was very hard casting Gilligan, very, very hard casting Gilligan. But I was very proud of it. It was good.
I wanted to see it for years. You know, back then, when you miss it, right?
Yeah.
And then I just happened to find it like 3 months ago, and I thought, how wonderful.
And it was a cute thing because I sure didn't want it out of his hand. You know, when I said, could I do that? And yeah, I'll let you do that, okay? So when we did it all, and casting was a nightmare actually. When we did it all, and it showed at the Skirball, and Sherwood sat down outside, and I said, well, Sherwood, what'd you think? And he said, well, it was my story. And I said, but I was there too.
On that note, I have to say real quick that I grew up in New Orleans, and my best friend and I come home every day and watch the show over and over and over again. And you made his day because last year he turned 50, and I had him do the Hollywood is Calling.
Oh,
And
yes.
You called him in New Orleans on his 50th,
Yes.
and you made his day.
Tell him I said hi to 51.
He's already 51.
Yes. Oh.
No, you go.
Okay, yes.
Well, I was around back in the 60s and 70s too, because I'm over 50. They had really good shows back then, 60s and 70s. My question is, are you the only surviving cast member left at a show?
Just Ginger and myself. We lost the professor last
That's
February.
why I was reading the paper. He died up in Washington State about a year ago.
Yeah, he did. I went to his funeral, and you know something? I knew he was in World War II and shot down in the Solomon Islands. He was a navigator, but I did not know until they presented the flag to his wife. He got a Purple Heart. Never mentioned it to us at all.
He had an interesting life, right? I mean, I know he lost his son to AIDS. He had a lot of challenges, but you say in the book that he was the funniest guy.
He was.
on
He had the
show.
best sense of humor, and he kept us laughing all the time. Very interesting.
Do you still see Tina Louise? Do you talk to her?
No. I did a play in New York. She didn't come to see me. Maybe she was off doing something else, but we just don't lead the same kind of life. We're not enemies or anything. I was in awe when she came to work. She was a big, beautiful movie star, and wow, I was in awe of that. But we just don't have anything in common. That's all.
Back there.
I still love your show, the show Gilligan's Island. And my question to you, did you guys rehearse all the scripts before it was filmed? And were you guys ever keep in touch, I think you kind of answered, keep in touch after the Gilligan's Island series ended?
No, we first question was we did not rehearse. We did a table read the first couple of episodes, but you get to now Gilligan falls out of a tree, and now you really can't read that.
That was all improv, pretty much?
Well, all of Bob's physical stuff was, but there was a script, but we just didn't sit down and read it. We do page 32 through 38 one day and bounce around. And then your second question was, oh, did we get together afterwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got together with the professor some and with Alan some, and of course Lovey. Lovey and I were friends, and we go shopping together and that kind of stuff.
You have a restaurant in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
Yeah, I went to see, I kind of glimpsed of it, we went to you a lot years ago.
Lobster pot or something like that, almost Los Angeles. And he usually greeted you.
Yes, he did.
And you know his daughter, if you're in any of these small comedy clubs, Samantha Hale is his granddaughter, and she's doing stand-up. And Patrick Denver is Bob Denver's son, and he's doing special effects, all these Frankenstein things and everything. Yeah.
See, you are like a proud mama with a lot of.
I am. I raised the little kids, and I did a good job, didn't I?
In the
I
red.
had a question. I grew up watching the reruns, a little bit younger, but you guys shot, the set was supposed to be on an island. Did you ever do any remote shots actually somewhere else outside the original set?
No. No, we tried filming the first year a couple of times at Malibu, and there was so much fog, we could only film about 2 hours a day, so no, we didn't. When we did one of the specials, we used a pond at Paramount, I think when the Howells built a hotel or something, one of those dreadful plots. 90 minutes is way too long. Yes,
Yeah, so you still look very young, and I'm just wondering what the secret is.
there's a big screen in front of me. This kind of blurs me. I
Do
don't
you,
know.
do you talk about your age? Do you say what your age
Of course,
is?
how can you not? They know it everywhere.
Well, because it's.
Because
you do look
Mrs.
fat.
Howell, we never knew how old she was, ever, ever, ever. I said, Natalie, I never tell anybody, how do you get on a passport? And we shared a doctor at one time, and I said, okay, Dr. Noel. How old is she? Just old, Dawn, just old. No, how old? Old, Dawn, just old. And when she died at 91, I was just shocked. No, I keep saying that I'm gonna be Betty White when I grow up. And I live to be 100, and I just turned 76.
When you think about it, Natalie Schaefer, that means if she was born in 1900, she was between 64 and 67 when she was doing some physical stuff on that show. They had her jumping into a lagoon and whatever. She was not a young kid when she was doing
And
it.
not, didn't require a lot of being spoiled or anything. And I look at it now, I'm talking to the women here, you men don't even want to listen to this. But I look at now how she wardrobed herself. She had kind of thick ankles, so she usually always wore a long skirt or pants, and pants weren't really in then. She always wore something colorful around her face to bring the color, and the pretty hats, and she always wore gloves, so her hands didn't show. And now I get it, I didn't get it. That was a great costume. She was a beautiful woman anyway. She was a lovely lady.
Any other questions? Back there?
Is it true that people thought Gilligan's Island was actually happening?
Yeah.
Yes, as a matter of fact, about the 5th or 6th week into the show, we were in the middle of a scene, and Sherwood came in with a Coast Guard and said the Coast Guard needs to talk to him. Stopped us all, and the Coast Guard said, "We have gotten telegrams saying there are 7 people lost in the Pacific. Why can't you find them?" You don't think the audience doesn't believe what they're seeing? Can you imagine that? Isn't that something?
Is that Sherwood Schwartz? Were they like producers of one of the companies here, like Warner Brothers or something?
No, he was an independent producer. I think he teamed up with Phil Silver's
It said,
finance.
oh, it
department.
always said Schwartz and Schwartz. I always thought maybe they were part of the Hollywood.
Well, his
company.
brother wrote, replaced the characters. I think he was the one who wrote the character of Ginger when they had rewrites. And then the son, Lloyd, is producing and directing and writing some things too. Yeah, it was the Schwartz family though. I mean, he did a million shows.
Brady Bunch too, obviously.
Oh, Brady Bunch, and he did like the,
Well, some shows you see that there's a guy named Spelling. You always see Spelling on the end of the
Uh-huh.
shows too. He was another family. That Tori Spelling's father or whatever. He was producer of shows too.
Aaron Spelling, I
Yeah,
didn't
he
know
was.
about those
Yeah.
shows. But Sherwood and Jim worked together on I Married Joan and some of those shows like that, you know. I have a funny story about that if you want to come in real quick. Jim Backus drank a lot, and he was on the Wagon Arnold show. And Joan Davis drank a lot, so they drank a lot on this show. And he said every time there was any kind of an animal or a guest star, Joan Davis had to interview them 4 or 5 times, make sure it was just right. Is this the best dog? So she was doing a show with a chimp. And she was supposed to bathe the chimp and put suds all over it and rinse it off and then dress it. So they interviewed, I don't know, 100 chimps and finally got the right little chimp. And she's there in the set and she's shampooing the little monkey and rinsing him off and everything. And he bites her on the arm. And she just screams and faints, and they get the ambulance and they take her to the hospital. The next day the chimp died. Well, it was the alcohol.
revelation in here about Jim Backus, by the way, about Thurston Howell. Do you want to share that, or you want to make them get the book?
Oh, get the book first.
There's a fun revelation about Jim Backus.
I'm sure you've heard me say it 1,000 times. He was cheap. With all that money, he would say, Natalie, I'm taking you girls to lunch. We're going to blah, blah, blah to lunch next week. Dawn, I'm taking you girls to lunch. Natalie he never had a credit card. He never had any cash. And Natalie
Forgot his wallet.
forgot my wallet. So at the end of the year, Natalie presented with a $360 bill for the lunches. I don't know whether she ever got it though, actually, to tell you the truth.
I love the millionaire. See, that's how he made his money. That's
Exactly.
On these reruns, you get paid for when it goes
No,
on syndication?
not a thing.
Not a thing?
I understand only because I did a thing for CBS called TV Moguls. That Sherwood Schwartz made $90 million on the Gilligan's Island rerun alone. Not the production, not Brady Bunch, just Gilligan's Island.
And now
We
the
didn't
actors-
we made maybe $1,500 or something in the first year or two, and after I had to deal with if they show it on a plane or something like
Oh,
that.
they should give you something because you guys are in the show. That's your
Right.
livelihood. That's your
Yeah,
livelihood.
but you didn't,
Grassroots movement.
Yeah, but you didn't know there were residuals when you signed on. Gunsmoke started it. His agent finally said, you're gonna run it again, you gotta pay him. And that's the reason residuals came into being. And now they're making $1 million a week just to film something. Oh well, I was lucky to do it.
Did they ever win any awards in like the Emmy? I don't know if they had Emmys
No,
back
I
then.
don't think so.
No.
Stupidest show ever written. And I take offense to that.
I saw Catwoman in Malibu a long time ago. The Batman, what was her name? Julie
Julie.
I saw her in Catwoman a long time ago, yeah. So you guys were on the same time.
Same time, same time, Julian.
But you know, talking about the show not necessarily being realistic and being cartoony, it also is so engaging, and there's something about it that sucked us all in. So even if it isn't the smartest written show, what is it that made us all love it?
Well, I think it's because it was a family, and it was a mixed family that all got along. We all tried to support each other in our own way, even with our flaws, even though we tried to get through it. It was beautiful to look at. It was the first sitcom out of the living room, in the garage. Here we were in this beautiful surrounding, and it was funny. I mean, it was funny, silly, crazy, funny.
It was.
Surfing off and surfing on, and all of that crazy, but you kept coming back, thinking they were gonna. It was the casting. I think the casting was brilliant. As they were putting it together, they had different ideas for the skipper, different idea for Gilligan, and they just got the chemistry right.
And a different idea for Marianne, I've heard. A very different
But no,
way
it
to
really
go.
isn't. I hear that, and I don't even think that's true. Because they keep saying that Raquel Welch was up for Marianne. And I remember that when there were 300 people in this soundstage auditioning, and I think Thursday night is when they finally made the decision. Somebody said that Raquel Welch walked in to audition for Marianne. I never saw her, number one. And she'd have made a better Ginger than a Marianne. I don't know whether that's true, and I keep getting asked that question, so I don't know.
Do you know who any of the other contenders was?
Well, Pat Priest and every legend.
What about Marilyn Monroe?
Who?
Marilyn Monroe is Ginger.
Marilyn Monroe? Oh, she was.
I think she had passed away by then.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, she died a year before that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Some other folks asking questions.
Okay, I know.
anybody else?
Anybody else? Oh,
Yes, why would you pack 48 bags for a 3-hour
Good question. There was no reality, was there? And we bought it. You believed it with the natives and the astronauts coming in and the trunks full of old movie star clothes, and we always looked pretty.
They apparently packed enough makeup for 3 years. They packed enough gingham shirts so that they were never stained or dirty.
It was a 3-hour cruise, 3-hour tour. Where do we think we were going? Just around the block. I don't know. Yes.
Ms. Wells, I had the opportunity to meet you at the Grove 2 months ago,
Yes.
and you gave me some great advice on how to find the woman of my dreams.
And you're sitting by yourself.
I have yet to find her. But the advice you gave me was look for, I remember you distinctly said, and I quote, Ginger will leave me broke, and then she'll leave me after I'm broke. But you said Marianne will take care of me, and she'll boost me up and say, honey, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that from that conversation, every time I look at a woman, there's something that says, no, she's Ginger. And I just wanted to thank you.
That's so sweet. You know, I was back at my college, back at Stevens about 6 months ago, and I was talking to a bunch of girls, and I wheeled it down to just 2. I said, I have a question. Would Marianne work today or would Ginger work today? And one of the girls said, not a chance with Marianne. She's got to be aggressive, she's got to be strong, she's got to stand up for herself, she's got to try to eliminate the competition. And the other little girl just said, oh, there's way too many Gingers already. Well, that's kind of what's happening with the $500 purses and everything. We're putting the values in the wrong place. It's only in the wrong place temporarily. But once you've sent something out over the internet you can't get back, then that's a little different. I have a godson that was dating, he's 14, and he came out to his mother's death. And he came out and he said, Mom, my girlfriend just sent me a topless picture of herself by phone. What do I do? And she said, what do you think we should do? And he said, I think we should talk to her mother. And they got the mother on the phone and had a long conversation. Now, instead of going and passing it on to his friends, but boy, that's a good kid that's being raised to begin with. But it's very, very hard today. But if you've got love and restrictions, I know you're going to rebel. I say to you parents, of course you can go through their drawers when they're not at home. Why not? What should they have in their drawers you shouldn't see? Probably some things, but then how do you react to it? Do they know that you went through their drawers? Blah, blah, blah. But I think my mother was tough, and my mother was around me all the time, and I didn't like it. A lot of my friends could go out and drink beer and stuff, but I knew there was love there, and I knew there was respect. And I don't know how, with both parents working and maybe mixed families with kids, and I don't know. It's got to be a tough job.
And in the wild west of Nevada, I mean, you were, as you said, you were growing up in a state where a lot of this was happening and legal. Prostitution was legal, there was gambling. There certainly was temptation all around.
Yeah, but I didn't go to college there either.
Right.
I got out of high school and went to a convent. Well, I mean, Stevens College, we couldn't ride in cars with boys the first 6 weeks. We had to be in our room between 12 and 1 o'clock after lunch. We had to wear hose to dinner. They paid attention. Church on Sundays was very, but you know what? One of the things I say, when you have restrictions, it frees you. You know exactly how far you can go. If you don't have that restriction, if you didn't have a speed limit, how many more accidents would there be? Let me turn my car this way. Let me turn right on this sign. I think those guidelines are necessary for life. And it depends on how your parents handle it with you.
I think we have time for one last question, so let's get in.
To answer that question, or to address that question about whether Marianne would be successful today, I've become a huge fan of your Facebook account. And I've become a huge Don Wells fan because of that.
Isn't that nice? Well, this has taken me kind of by storm, this social media. I do not sit in front of a typewriter and email all day long. I do not. I'd rather hear your voice. But this Facebook is, I have found so many friends and so many people that you've lost track of. I mean, it really is wonderful. And if everybody's portraying who they really are, you know, you can con anybody into anything. But I really have a communication. I really like it. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I have one question. Do you think that, with the word feminism is in the news again, do you think Marianne would be a feminist?
Of course. Of course. I think she would balance everything out. I think she would I accept everything, and I accept everything if there's goodness and kindness and love amongst it. I don't accept abuse and bullying and all of that kind of stuff, but I think homosexuality, drinking, gambling to a certain extent, those things are part of what this world is about. And you can't fight the rest of the world. You need to look at it with love in your heart. I mean, it's a complex world right now. And if everybody watched out for themselves and treated everybody else the way they want to be treated, the golden rule, whatever it is, we've forgotten that. We're too interested in making money and getting ahead and all of that, and you have to be. If you've got 5 or 6 kids and all that kind of stuff, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. I think love conquers a lot, but you also have to pay attention. I was at an autograph show, and this couple came up to me, and he bodyguards in Saudi Arabia with all the big mucky mucks, and she's something in the Marines. And she had this little thing on her belt, and she said, we have children. I said, you do? How is it living over there and all of that? She said, I've got this little phone here. She said, I know where they are every single second. If I tell anybody, they take it away from me. But because of her security clearance or whatever, she knows where everybody is. I don't know where my mother, she'd have a phone in her ear and follow me with a radar. I don't know. I don't know what she would have done with a society today. I don't know. But I don't give up hope. I think we're doing a pretty good job. And now we're 7 continents or 10 continents or whatever, trying to get along. We are trying to get along. Everybody wants peace. I mean, most everybody does. Or we're being evicted.
Well, amen to that. I think that's where we should end. But everybody, the book is called What Would Marianne Do?
Have you bought it yet?
Not there.